Hello everyone, it's Sam, and I'm back with a Wizard Minute review. We are doing Quiet on Set, the dark age of kids TV. I felt very disgusted throughout the whole thing. My context with this comes from reading Jeanette McCurdy's book, listening to the audiobook of I'm Happy My Mother Died. Jeanette McCurdy mentions the creator, which is Dan Schneider, and I was familiar with Dan Schneider, of course, because I love Drake and Josh. That was a great show that my brother and I used to watch, and I think all his TV shows were very popular. I mean, iCarly was more my generation, but he got dropped from the shows, and this documentary focuses on the bad parts of TV and how kids can be taken advantage of. The first point I want to bring up is the power dynamic. What I learned in the book and what you learn more in the documentary is that there's a huge power dynamic between Dan Schneider or any producer of a TV show and these kids, because a lot of the time these kids are providing for their families, which is a huge financial responsibility, a responsibility I couldn't even imagine. Dan Schneider would say things like, I picked you, you're my special girl, don't disappoint me, do what I say. And this can create a huge problem between someone that's of that age or in that power position and a younger kid, because what other choice do you have besides to, give Dan Schneider a massage? Just creating a really bad environment. It makes me sick. Dan Schneider started with all that and the Amanda Bynes show and just got bigger and bigger. He was Nickelodeon's golden boy, and I think he got more and more comfortable with getting away with stuff. I mean, the documentary mentions how they hired 2 women writers and they split the salary. That's insane. I mean, to be like, instead of hiring 1 writer, we're gonna hire 2 for the same price. I mean, you wouldn't get a split salary in today's economics. Like degrading and kind of trashing other ideas and trying to be playful on set by, texting them or instant messaging them, say slut out loud or say whore out loud. It's this environment he created he could get away with for longer than he should have. One thing I never noticed as a kid watching the shows, and I notice now, and especially with the documentaries, it talked about all the sexual innuendos, they had a lot of jokes about pickles and stuff getting sprayed on faces and just like a lot of nasty and too much obsession over feet and licking, and this kind of contributes to this gross sense of humor that he could get away with. There's an example early on where one of Amanda Bynes' characters, his last name is Taint, and gets away with it because he's like, it's like tainted. It's not like the body part. It's like tainted. So just all that kind of, you don't think about it, but it adds up. Some of the cast members talking about Double Dare, one of the early Nickelodeon shows where it was like a kid's version of Fear Factor. And these kids were like doing stuff that made them super uncomfortable. Peanut butter, like all over their bodies, and like getting licked by dogs, and then like being in these like really confined like tubes and spaces. I thought it was also interesting with Dan Schneider, with the Amanda Bynes closeness. I mean, there's a clip of him being in the same hot tub as her. Them referring to Dan Schneider as this god. When Amanda Bynes wanted emancipation from her parents to be an adult so she could work more hours and be free from the financial giving them money, Dan Schneider backed Amanda Bynes, for a lot of people think, just to have more time with her. When Jeanette McCurdy was working, Dan Schneider wasn't even allowed in the same room. He wasn't allowed in the same room. He was put in another room to direct, but they still didn't fire him. Nickelodeon let this just simmer for way too long. Another big part of the documentary is Brian Peck. He was a dialect coach, and he did lewd acts with an underage person, which is revealed to be Drake Bell. And it's kind of the shock because, I mean, Drake Bell's been on the news recently for texting a minor and going missing. Brian Peck was just this friendly dialect coach, and he would have Drake over at his house and be like, no, parents are allowed to be over here because we got to work on our stuff. Another point is Brian Peck wanted to drive a wedge between Drake and his dad because his dad saw that Brian Peck was creepy and gross towards Drake and very like touchy. So he basically would say all these things to Drake about how he's mismanaging his money, and then his mom basically handed Drake over on a silver platter. It's foul. It's just foul. Red flag about Brian Peck was one of the All That cast members was at his house and went into this gallery, and it was themed, and I don't remember exactly what it was, but there was one image that was not like the others. I mean, it's a clown, and in my brain, I'm already thinking John Wayne Gacy, and it eventually was John Wayne Gacy, and Brian Peck and John Wayne Gacy were pen pals, and he was bragging to the cast member about having this picture of John Wayne Gacy, and he stayed hired. He stayed hired after he just bragged about having messages from a serial killer that was killing kids. It's this kind of thing where Hollywood creates the situation of kids getting forced into things. Brian Peck also, when he went to court, had a lot of Hollywood backers. People like James Marsden wrote letters for Brian Peck in support of him, while Drake Bell, on his side, only had his family with him. This documentary, it was sick, it was cruel. I mean, I feel like it only scratched the surface. I would say that you should definitely watch this documentary. It's kind of hard. It's not hard from a nostalgia standpoint because I don't have a problem not watching any of those shows ever again. It just makes me feel so bad for people like Jeanette McCurdy and Miranda Cosgrove, and just being on a set where you literally are working to fund your family, but also you have to be kind of level-headed and realize that there's probably a predator on this set, and there's probably a few. Wizard Minute Review with a lot more of a serious topic. Please comment, like, share if you like this kind of thing, because it was hard to watch, but very informative, and people should know. So watch the documentary. It's on HBO. Peace.